Please introduce yourself and tell us about what you do.
Hello, my name is Aleksander Koren. I am a biologist, a nature conservationist, and I work for the Institute for Nature Conservation of Republic of Slovenia. Our institute is the main nature conservation organization, governmental nature conservation organization in our country. So we are dealing with all sorts of issues. We are involved in all sorts of permits, spatial planning, management of protected areas, and such issues. Um, a lot of our work is also dedicated to different nature conservation projects, EU projects, national nature conservation projects. And my particular field of work is I've been working now for 15 years for the Institute, mostly on protecting our two rivers, the Drava River and most of my time the Mura River. These are two big lowland rivers in Slovenia where we have all sorts of issues, of course, all sorts of tasks. And on these two rivers, and mainly on the Mura River, we also implemented a chain of uh, restoration projects in recent years, starting, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago with, let's say, more soft projects, with communication projects, with strategies and such projects. And especially in recent years, in recent 7, 8 years, we then switched to concrete restoration projects, to large-scale restoration projects, where I was project manager of several such projects now in recent years. Some of them are finished, some of them are still ongoing.
What were the drivers for the project? Water Framework Directive? Another legal requirement?
Actually, in our case, since we are a nature conservation organization, it was this was nature conservation legislation like Natura 2000 the directives. Our main focus was actually to implement Natura 2000 management plan in the area of the Mura River, for instance.
What is important about this project, its goals? What is special or unique about it?
So the Mura River, maybe to start with the area, is our biggest free-flowing river in our country, which means that in this 100 kilometers that the river flows through our country, there is no dikes, no dams or hydropower operations or whatever. And the Mura is then part of the largest free-flowing section of the lowland river ecosystems in Europe, so the Mura-Drava-Danube ecosystem, which is the world's first five-country biosphere reserve also. So Mura is part of that. But of course, this is in the middle of Europe, so this is not an intact river. It has a lot of problems also deriving from our human interventions in previous centuries, let's say. So there is a big need for restoration because the river is now, it used to be a meandering river with a lot of side arms, oxbow lakes, islands, and so on. At the moment, it's more or less regulated, so it's fixed. The riverbed is deepening. There's no creation of new habitats like gravel bars or side arms, or very little, not enough. So this is why such projects are necessary on the Mura River. What is unique about our projects is this, that that the projects represent the biggest river restoration effort in our country ever. So what was done on the Mura River in recent 10, 15 years is the biggest river restoration in our country so far, yeah.
What measures did you take to achieve the goals of the project?
Our approach is like, let's say, we have a quite holistic approach, ecosystem approach, let's say. So even though it's a river with its floodplain and floodplain forests and so on, our projects were never just about restoring the river itself. Of course, this was the focus. We were restoring, removing the embankments on several kilometers. We reconnected so far 9 kilometers of sidearms. Several oxbow lakes were restored. Smaller standing water bodies also, and so on. But we were also dealing with other issues like restoring floodplain forests, like replacing plantations of non-native tree species with native ones, or restoring floodplain meadows, and so on. So we had a wide approach to restoring the whole ecosystem, not just the river itself.
Where did the funding come from? Did the funders impose any specific constraints?
Most of the funding, of course, comes from EU funds. So the biggest restoration project so far implemented was called Natura Mura. This was a cohesion co-funded project from Cohesion Fund. Now we have an ongoing life project, which is a 5-country life project, Life Restore for MDD. It's named. This is again co-funded from EU money. And we are now working on the preparation of the next cohesion co-funded project, which should start next year. Again, mostly money from EU, but all the projects are also co-funded by our national budget. And of course, also the maintenance after the project finishes is again from our national budget. So it's a combination of.
What were the main challenges in implementing this project?
The main challenges were connected to different policies. You know, we have in Europe and also in Slovenia, of course, all sorts of nature conservation laws and directives and policies, yeah. But this is not in line with other policies. So with, I don't know, agricultural policies or forestry or other policies. And this is, then when you try to implement such projects, then you quickly come to a conflict between these policies. And this is probably the biggest challenge. And then you get further on to the challenge of getting the land to do the measures, for instance, because a lot of land is privately owned. And then you get to the next level to get the permits from all the key stakeholders, which again have different ideas how the area should look like, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So there is a lot of different visions how a river should look like, even though we have the money and now we even have the nature restoration law, for instance, but the old policies haven't changed because of this, and this is the biggest issue, if you ask me, if you want to implement nature restoration or river restoration in our case, yeah.
What would you do differently next time and why?
Especially maybe implement or prepare locations where the land ownership is clear, or purchase the land that you need in advance, not do it in the same project that you want to implement measures, because this proved to be very difficult. This is maybe one such point, yeah, to stress out.
Were there things that you wanted to do but could not?
Of course, yes, of course there were. We were very ambitious at the beginning. We had big plans, big ideas, what we would like to implement. But then further down the process, you notice that some of your ideas are maybe too big, or maybe 10, 20 years too early for the society. So we had to adapt our expectations to the reality. Yeah? So not everything could be implemented for several reasons. But in most cases, it was the land ownership, because we couldn't get the land necessary for implementing what we originally planned, yeah.
Are there aspects of this project that are specific to the location, region, or country? What would be transferable?
Maybe for this particular river, for the Mura River, one speciality is that the land ownership is very, very fragmented. A lot of small plots with a lot of owners. This is special also within our country, for instance. And one other thing is also that the Mura River has, in comparison to some other rivers in our country, it's very important to local people, culturally important. They identify their identity with the river. So we had to work very closely with them. We had to present them every step that we are planning, include them as much as possible in planning and implementation and everything. And maybe these lessons learned are definitely useful for someone trying to implement something similar also in some other river.
At what stage of implementation is this project today? How has it changed with climate change and over time?
Yeah, so like I said, this is actually a chain of several restoration projects. So the biggest one, the Natura Mura project, finished 2 years ago. We are now in the middle of implement. So if I limit myself only to these big restoration projects that we are implementing in recent years, the next one is the Life project that I talked about. This is now in the middle of implementation. And the third one, which is now in planning, will start next year. So we are in the middle of implementing our vision on the Mura River. But the fact is that the first big measures were only finished few years ago. So it's not enough time to really estimate how this will develop and what the impact of climate change will be on these measures. But we do see a big impact on the river's hydrology already, anyway, because we have in recent years very extreme water levels, either high or either low. For instance, this winter was record low for decades, and it's very low for, I don't know, 3-4 months now already, and we can easily say that this is a consequence of climate change in Europe, in the Alps, yeah, where the water comes from. And this will definitely have to be taken in account in any future management of this river or other rivers also. Yeah.
What do you see as the main challenges for freshwater restoration projects now?
I would say similar to that I answered already. The main challenges is this consistency between the different policies. On one hand, we have a lot of laws and directives and so on that support river restoration, for instance. But on the other hand, all the policies that actually are causing the deterioration of our freshwater ecosystems are still in place. We just created a conflict between those policies now. And it's very difficult in such situation to implement restoration on larger scale, which would be needed. And I see this as the biggest challenge, I would say.
In your experience, what would you recommend to someone wanting to implement a restoration project to do as a priority?
I would say they would need to take time to prepare very well. So in our case, for instance, if I recall a bit, I don't know, 15 years ago, our idea was simply let's start with the implementation on the field, but it didn't go as we planned because the key stakeholders didn't accept our vision, let's say like this. So the next step was to prepare a vision. So we prepared an action plan, which took us few years of communication, working with stakeholders, exchanging opinions, and then we finish this process with action plan that is basically acceptable for all key stakeholders. So this, I think, this is a crucial stage that you shouldn't let out if we want to see this happening on the field, because otherwise you could have big problems when implementation during the implementation phase. Yeah.
What would you recommend that they try to avoid?
They should use the knowledge that is existing. They shouldn't invent something really new, because a lot of times when I follow these restoration projects in other countries and in other parts of our country also, I see that they want to implement very similar measures that we already know that don't work very well, for instance. You should use the knowledge, not invent on your own. And also maybe not to think too ambitiously at the beginning. Start step by small measures that people accept them first, and then you can upgrade your skill. This is maybe something to recommend.
Do you have any suggestion for your government or the European Commission as to measures that might help enable more and more successful restoration projects?
Yeah, I would say they should align the policies. They should decide what to do, not support everything in different directions. Let's all take the same direction and then work in the same direction. If this is nature restoration, that then let's go in this direction. Let's put also other stakeholders on board, not just say to the nature conservationists or to the water managers, you should restore the rivers, and leave other policies as they are. Yeah.
In summary, what are your key messages for those facing the restoration challenge?
I would say be courageous, be ambitious, be patient also, because everything takes time. Start with small steps, and then gradually, with a snowball effect, it will get bigger and bigger, and maybe you will be surprised what is possible. All with all the constraints and everything, still a lot of things are possible if you are ambitious and patient. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answers. Have a nice day.